All right. Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Welcome to Big Book Compendium. Um, the core, I like to say the core message of life is that there's an absolute truth. And that absolute truth is beyond concepts that we may have followed our whole life, beliefs that we told we had to have. And a characteristics is that we reach is called knowing the divine. And from that, we know our true identity and we know our true nature. Even if you struggled finding that, you've been there before at some point, and that our identity it's limitless, everlasting, it flows. And remember how anything we know is from experience it. So the condition is we have to seek it, this thing. And what we experience is what Carl Jung calls spiritual conversion. And he mentions that in this book. He says he goes, they have a huge muscle displacements and rearrangements, ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which are once the guiding force of life of these men are suddenly cast to one side. And a new set of conceptions become to dominate them. There's not one person in here, I don't think, that's experienced that at some point. And the conversion is, so it's basically, it's an adoption of a new belief system towards higher power or God, whatever you want to call it, that differs the old one. It drowns the old one out, leading to a change in character and wholeness. And Bill Wilson discovered, in that Carl Jung mentions that he'd been trying, that alcoholics have these vital spiritual experiences and they're phenomena. And he'd been trying to produce that within him, but he'd never been successful with alcohol of his description. And Bill Wilson, where Carl Jung failed, Bill Wilson discovered a way to reach the conversion. It was 429. To this day, there's nothing on record that can do that. So this leads to a transformation spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and it restores us to sanity, which they promise in step 2. Removing the obsession. And step 10, we practice 429 as a way of life. I'm going to put up step 10. So step 10 states continue. This important word. It doesn't say remember to take personal inventory. It doesn't say when you feel like it. It says continue to take personal inventory, and we're wrong, promptly admit it. Right? Continued is a very spiritual word. One of the top 5 most spiritual words you ever come across when it's in the realm of the steps. It means to keep doing something without stopping. Right? Now, it might sound, we think, oh, I did that. I used to be an addict. No, that's an addict. We're talking about continuing something that we want. It means to keep doing something without stopping, something repeatedly. My personal favorite definition of continue that perfectly goes with step 10 is to keep doing a specified course of action, specific course of action. Step 10, 11, 12 are what I like to call the 3 steps of spiritual progress. And it's not ones you do to try to be better. It's not ones you try to do because you need to find a better person. It's because you want to stay better, right? And if you do it in repetition, you will never step out of it and you'll never use again. I've never known anyone that used again and did the steps. Did that tons of times. Every time there's something in the armor, it's kind of, I heard a guy say recently, everyone that he's ever come across that try to argue the fact that they did the steps, he found a hole in their cup, so to speak, a leak in their cup. But it's the same definition as practice, to continue. And step 10, what does step 10, 12 say? Practice these principles in all affairs. That's how we do it, 4-9 in all affairs. So there's 2 steps mentioned above. First, personal inventory, and when wrong, properly admit it would be 9, right? So now, on 80, we're going to page 84, and we're going to start off by looking at the last sentence on 84 of right before step 10, because it's vitally important. I'm going to close this out. Vitally important. So it's the promises that we read last week, and it's the last sentence. They will always materialize, become reality with the huge condition if we work for them. Now, if I bounced back and forth in recovery before, did you work for them? Like it says in this book. They'll always be reality if I take action. So the book, so that's what they're saying there. They're always materialize. Those promises will stay in motion if I'm always taking action, if I'm making amends. And it says this thought of action brings us to step 10. It's interesting how he flows that thought of action into step 10, reminding us that, well, let's just see what it says, which suggests we continue to take personal inventory. There's that word again, personal inventory. I'm going to say this now. I'm going to repeat myself a few times because it's good to, is moral inventory is only mentioned, as far as I know, twice in the book, maybe one more, someone will correct me somewhere, but moral inventory is mentioned in the actual step on 61 or 62, 60. And that mentions it in the forward. Every other time, and I have a count somewhere, but I don't have it in front of me, personal inventory is used to describe inventory. Personal inventory that many of us have never attempted, right? He mentions it. Go to the book and look at that, because people want to say there's a difference between moral and personal inventory, and it's the same thing. When we start separating words that Bill Wilson wants to use the same, we kind of pee in the soup of what we're doing. And, shortcomings, defects, the characters, actions, wrongs are the exact same thing. Personal inventory, moral inventory is the exact same thing. And there's tons of more of the exact same because he liked words that were synonymous. So I'm a big book traditionalist, and I didn't understand why people would want to make step 10 inventory something different. It doesn't make a lick of sense. So then what we did in step 4. Sure, it's done in a different sense. When we first did step 4, we didn't know anything, and we're looking back at our whole lives of our resentments, fears, and so forth, right? We have no idea where we're, really like what's going to happen next. And, we're just following directions. When it happens after doing 6 and 7 or 9, we have an awakening. And by that time, we have a pretty good idea what happened, and we start to understand inventory by that time. The awakening really happens like when you're doing your 5th step. It's the start of it. It's when you start getting it, what you're doing in step 5, right? You go into the 4th step, and the first couple pages, inventory is kind of rocky, right? Because it's a new awareness we're gaining, something different. If it can take a blind person who's spiritually, not spiritually woke, spiritually sick, spiritual malady, and snap them, not just, go from point A to point Z, so to speak, and have an awakening. Imagine what this inventory can do for you on a daily basis when you understand it, when the problems pile up on you, the littlest problems pile up on you, right? Why would I want to make it different? Again, this is just my experience. This is the way I've been taking to the steps. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm not trying to knock any other ways. So, and don't change the way you do it if it works for you. There's 3 words that are hard to get past. I said this before, how to get past the word continue, right? Continue means specific course of action. What course of action? One we just did, 4 through 9. The other 2 words that's hard to get past, I mentioned, is personal inventory. I explained that a minute ago, right? People argue between personal and moral inventory, and there's no argument there. It's, if you're arguing it there, then you're doing some other program. Every time he mentions inventory in this book, he calls it personal. That's the thing that's important to understand. But we continue to do the definite example on 65. Definite means absolutely true, certain, precise. I've been doing it the same boring way for 21 years, I guess you want to call it if I'm boring, but I don't think it's boring. Whenever I decided to do written inventory, I do it out of the book. And, Bill's referring to the definite example on 65, in my opinion, when he says we continue to take personal inventory. How can we get past that word? If he wanted us to do it different, he would explain it. Now, some people argue with that, say it's in the 12 and 12, it says we can do spot check inventory. Hey, if you want to do that, go for it. But I've been doing spot check inventory in my head. That's thinking my way through stuff. How well will that get you? I've seen people get screwed up by doing spot checking, but maybe I'm wrong, And I don't believe in annual house cleaning. That would mean inventory once a year. And there's people that believe in a 10-step inventory once a year. Some are a little bit nicer and they say semi-annual house cleaning. That's doing inventory every, 6 months, twice a year. I would be crazy or be dead. I mean, that's just me. That's just me because I'm crazy. But some call the night review 10-step inventory, even though the book just says we're now at step 11. This is why we have book studies, to point this stuff out. Whether you agree with it or not, this is why we have book studies. And I want to say I'm not trying to change anyone's perspective here. Let's go back to the book. It says we vigorously, you know what vigorously means? When you lose your dope in your house or your alcohol and you didn't just say, oh, it's somewhere around here. No, you tore apart the whole house looking for it. We vigorously commence this way of living as a clean up the past. The last time you did this step, this time, are you vigorously commencing this way of living? Are you? Think about what that means. I don't think that means we put other things first. So clean up the past would be amends, step 9. A big misconception about 10 is that we have to wait, until you have a bunch of stuff pile up on top of your head to do it, before we, start to, get into it. That's a big falsehood. We will be on our amends, well, let me rephrase that. Some people say that you got to wait till you get through your amends to do step 10. That's a falsehood as well. But the other one, will be on our amends for life. The other one is we've got wait till stuff piles up on them to do it. And that's not right either. And plus I'm doing 10, 11 together. Look what it says here. And this is where they start to first come together. We've entered the world of the spirit. That's my temple. That's the new place of God. That's the place we stored all our shit for so long. Our resentments, our fear, our worst thoughts were stored in that temple inside of us, God within. Now we've entered that world and we cleaned it out. Sometimes the first time we enter that world is in step 6. Many want to enter that world without doing 429. You can't. But anyone can enter that world. Here's why they can't, because they got to leave their stuff at the door before they go in. How much stuff do you want to bring with you? You're an alcoholic, you're an addict. Family's going to be burying you if we don't get well. That's a good reason. People try to understand 429 before they do it, and they don't, because they have not entered the world of the spirit. We cannot enter the world of the spirit until we realize and come to the awareness that we are spirit within us. We are spirit. And that happens when you experience God with, like I said, deep down within. It just said in step 9 promises. Remember what it said is, God's doing for us we cannot do for ourselves. That's 4 through 9. Here in step 10, we're experiencing that every day. God doing for us, so I can't do it for ourselves. And you just put your hands up and you say, wow. And I know people in here have experienced that. Are you there? Are you there with God? God either is or isn't. There's no middle road. If it's not a God thing for you, pick another word, love or peace, whatever. But you got to have something. As long as it's not, you got to have a higher power, as long as you're not it anymore. Our next function is to grow in understanding and effectiveness. And we don't understand it means. It means to comprehend the nature of something, to see things, right? To know. By understanding, I understand and know who I am, the I am factor. I am peace, I am love. I'm not happy right now. I am, you know. So we're going in that understanding, and effectiveness is a level which something is successful, you know, in producing a desired result. Success. That success is doing step 10. The reason I'm doing step 10 is to grow. And lots of people call step 10 a maintenance step. It does say the maintenance of our spiritual experience in here, but that doesn't mean it's a maintenance step. Maintenance means to keep something in good condition, try to keep something the same. Like a car, we call keeping it stock. It doesn't mean the car runs any good. You know, you might keep it stock inside. You might have a good paint job. I want to maintain it, but I want it to grow. I want to grow spiritually. How? By continuing doing the same principles we did before. I want to understand this thing I just did, and I'm going to take someone else through it. And meditation is going to be like my barometer to see where I'm at and get strength, inspiration, guidance, and directions. You know, does it make sense to do something different? I mean, maybe it does. Maybe I'm missing something, but this is, look what it says back in the book. It says, this is not an overnight matter. It should continue for a lifetime. I had a sponsor asked me one time if there's when are their days off from inventory, from recovery? This is, well, then you didn't do the third step prayer, because you turn your whole life over to the care of this, right? You didn't turn your whole life over to the care of your boss or your neighbors or your family, your kids, or anyone else. You turn your life over to the care of God, so God can care for you. Think of the word lifetime there. What it says is a duration of being alive, right? That's what lifetime means. Meaning 49, I don't do once. I do it for a lifetime. Some of you haven't had the joy of experiencing that yet, because, something happens and we get in the way and we don't do this the way it's written in here. But it can happen. Let's see what it says. It says continue. So there's that word again, continue to watch for selfish dishonesty, resentment, and fear. 4 things to be aware of that we weren't aware of before. We've heard the words dishonesty, and we used to try to convince people we weren't. People used to tell us we're an asshole. We try to convince them we're not. And the last thing we never wanted to admit was we were afraid, right? So now we're aware of those in different lights. Selfishness, tending, we know what that means. Tending mostly to my own needs, a little thought of others. Dishonesty is the act of lying, stealing, cheating, deceiving, and resentments is holding on to agitation and anger. Fear, afraid. 4 things we're now aware of. Remember, what you're aware of, you can work on. Anything you're aware of, you can work on. Even if it's a scratch on your face, you're aware of it, you can try to make it better, right? If you're aware your children are sad, you can make it better. So what I'm aware of within these steps, I can work on, I can change, I can watch it for it. But what I'm not aware of will control you. What you're not aware of, well, if you're not aware of resentments, and it's amazing, some people I know get the resentments really quickly, but then do inventory for 5 months and it's like they forgot everything. That's the way it works. What you're not aware of will control you. Some people think we're supposed to wait rather than watch, right? Because we're just continue to watch for self-dishonesty, resentment, and fear. What's the wait? Wait is wait for stuff to happen. That's anticipating something will happen. That's not this at all. Watching is totally different. It's looking and paying close attention, observing, spiritual observation through these eyes. It's the spiritual eyes now, right? Which is known as spiritual awareness. So in Taoism and Buddhism and other metaphysical traditions, there's talk about you becoming the watcher, and that's through meditation, right? The watcher of our thoughts. And for years, our mind and our ego was the watcher of our thoughts, and the reason being because it was driven by misdirected instincts, pride, and self-esteem. So when we look at our emotions, we were the watcher, our ego looked at them, right? When we have this awakening, there's a huge shift. The watcher becomes consciousness within us, the consciousness within us. You know, that stuff that you'd be doing something you knew was wrong. And his book says what used to be a hunch or occasional illustration becomes a working part of the mind. That's what I'm talking about. The consciousness takes over, meaning now when we look at our emotions through consciousness, we look at our emotions, consciousness is the watcher. You see through the eyes of consciousness rather than ego. It's a different thing. And yeah, if you're not connecting to that, you have to ask yourself what's going on. So at step 10, daily meditation. I don't like to say step 10 too often. I slip some and say it's daily. It's really like minute by minute, right? In daily meditation, consciousness grows more and more and more and more because it goes beyond watching our thoughts and emotions. We're watching now our surroundings, what's around us. We see around us, we almost like eyes all around our head. We are watching our body, our physical sensations. We want to get in better shape and stuff like that. Our breathing, our health in that way, right? Consciousness keeps expanding. That is what I mean when I say our thinking becomes one with God's thinking, the fourth dimension of existence. Watching is very powerful. If you get into meditation, look, study about, the Taoist aspect of watching, because it's very similar to what he's talking about here. We're watching for selfish dishonesty, resentment, and fear. And look what he says next. When these crop up, not if they crop up means suddenly appearing, right? When these crop up, here's a prayer. We ask God to remove them. It's the same thing as 6 and 7, but it's also 11 now. Think what you can do at 6 and 7. Now you know what that place looks like in 6 and 7. And whenever you pray from now on, you're bringing 11 into it. You gotta write something down and discuss it with another, and that place you go to in 6 and 7, you can go there daily in step 11. You're just bringing it into it. And if I can't get there daily in step 11, maybe I need to write something down. We'll get more into that in step 11. But when we discuss them with someone immediately, right? Sounds like 5. It's interesting. He puts God before the person, which is interesting, really interesting. I still go with talking to the person about it, so I get a better reaction with God when someone else tells me the things that, maybe things I'm not seeing, and make amends quickly if we have harmed anyone. Sounds like 9, quickly is a timely manner, which little or no delay. Immediately tells me that stuff needs to be done now. Isn't it interesting how he says quickly and immediately? People miss stuff like this, and this is why we have book studies again. Quickly and immediately. All this is done in a timely manner. Why would you write this stuff down? And I get sponsees that they got some pretty crazy stuff in 10, and I tell them that, maybe you need to go do an hour, and I call them up and they're, at home cooking bacon, or they're out on a hike somewhere. I'll do it tomorrow, and they never do it. And then they got the same thing going on again. That's just behavior modification. If I'm just writing stuff down and discussing with someone and not going further, it's just behavior. I'm just trying to get a desired behavior to be better. And that's not what we're doing here. It says, then we resolutely turn our thoughts over to someone we could help. Now he goes back to 12. You see that 10, 11, 12 and all that. When we do 6 now, 11's brought into it, right? And and of course we're doing 10, he closes with our thoughts over to someone we can help. It doesn't have to be someone that's in the program. Anybody, you walk into your house and it's dirty, stuff like that, helping our family, our friends. Every day you should be turning your thoughts over to someone you can help. Practicing these principles in all our affairs. Helen taught 3 steps of spiritual progress. Is there anywhere else in the world we could find something like this? And look what he reminds us. Love and tolerance of others is our code. Can you love somebody even if you disagree with them? Ask yourself that question. I mentioned it before. You know, it says in the Bible, it says if you say you love someone, you say you love God, and you know, and you hate your enemy, we call you a liar. You know, it's not the spiritual life. The spiritual life is becoming a vessel to love all. And how are we going to help people? Your main focus is how can I be attracted to people that want to come up to me and ask me what I want? I mean, say that you got something I want. You know, love and tolerance of others is our code, is the beginning of that. Code means standard form of behavior, right? To love all, to love all. I'm going to post the 10th step, and there's a whole packet here, but I'm just going to show you the packet looks a lot like the 4-step packet we use. And what we've done here is we put the same thing together in step 10, right? So this is very important. It's pretty kindergarten. You put the date down, and then, you know, you write an R for resentment, or harm for H for harm, or F for fear, right? It's very simple. I get a resentment because my neighbor moved my garbage can and complained to me about it, blah, blah, blah. It happened a couple weeks ago, actually. And it was reoccurring, so I wrote it down. The first time it didn't really bother me. I was just like, what's he doing? But then when he started blowing up, I was just like, all right, man, I'll make sure it's where you want it to be, you know. And then I wrote, and then I was like, whatever. And the whole day I'm sitting there going, what a dick. I'm all mad. And then all of a sudden I go, you know what am I doing? I wrote it down, and I liked the guy. It affected my personal relationship with him. I had high self-esteem big time, because the more I sat there with it, I was pumping that ball up. And then I was, of course, was worried about what people think of me. My pride's affected. I'm looking at my pride. I'm going, man, that guy touched my stuff. You know, emotional security is always affected. Otherwise I wouldn't have this. Right. And my ambitions changed with him. You know, we're planning on going on a hike in a couple of weeks. He doesn't want to go on a hike with me now. He doesn't want to, you know, my security with him's affected. And then of course I was selfish and frightened. And look what we added here. I had this for a reason, the same way Bill Reason created step 10. He created step 10 because people thought their spiritual awakenings would be everlasting. It says, you discuss it with another, yes or no? Ask God to remove it, yes or no? Make amends, yes or no? It's not inventory, it's 4 through 9. Inventory is just the key that goes into the door to open it. And people want to put inventory on this high pedestal. Did you do your inventory today? Did you do 4 through 9 today? You know, did you make amends? This is what it's all about. It's like it says on the bottom, continue for a lifetime. That's all it's supposed to look like. Keep it simple. If you got to write it on binder paper, write it on binder paper. Do it the same way. You'll get the same results. Why would they take you to work and train you on a job and then turn around and tell you, okay, we're going to teach you, we want you to learn your own way? Would that make sense? It wouldn't make any sense at all. Step 4, the first time you do it in 5, is training you for a lifetime. It's training you. That's the important thing. You know, the first time we did step 1 was the motivation and desperation to overcome alcoholism. Now, for the first time in our lives, we feel like we're moving forward. We're no longer drowning. You know, our mind's in a different, we're awake. And step 10 is about spiritual progress. You know, the same principles as it did before. You know, I look at it like this. First time I did 4 through 9, it was like the training wheels on a bike. Step 10, the training wheels are off. It's your time either to fall or ride, right? And another good way to put it is step 4 through 9 kicks the door open to God, and step 10 keeps the door open to God, right? Keep that whiteboard clean. Wipe it down. You know, I mean, when my glasses get dirty, right, I can't see nothing, but I can wipe them off and clean them. Same idea. Same idea. And once in a while, these new pair of glasses that we have now, put them on, but keep them clean. As I said earlier, step 10 is it's this whole thing in a single package. Except I look at those principles with, I mentioned 3 steps of spiritual progress. I don't put numbers next to them anymore. And it's been like that for a while. It's not like I planned it that way. It's just what happened. It's the principles of daily living of spiritual progress. And those 8 are inventory, discussing with another, letting God remove it, making amends, turning my thoughts over so I can help, asking, praying, listening, meditation, and sponsoring, right? That's 8 steps of progress. If you look at it that way when you're there, it's not a whole lot. It's not a whole lot. Sponsoring is very important as long as you're not doing it for pride and ego. You're doing it to pay back the person that took you through it, and to grow and to understand the steps. So I used to believe step 10 is more like, I mentioned it before, daily, and it's minute by minute when things crop up. And it's done that way, you're not going to have accumulated garbage. I don't have to do it every 6 months. But I've witnessed personally firsthand people crumble in this program because they wait to do inventory and it stocks up on them. Or they get embarrassed, they're telling me the same thing over again. Or they don't want to tell me the same thing over again because they know I'm going to tell them to go make amends to the same person they've been making amends to the last 6 months. So a lot of times it's a spouse. This is not doing it till there's a major problem. If you examine your thoughts and actions when they crop up and resolve them, negative thoughts and feelings will decrease. That's the thing. You will have strength and faith, and difficulties will feel like nothing. It's the way it is. Last week we read the 9 step promises, right? The promises of entering the spiritual realm. Now they're 9 step promises are very blinding promises. And what I mean by that is it's like a bright light on you all of a sudden, and you read them the first time, you're like, whoa. But by the time you get halfway through them, they start to make sense. And then these 10 step promises are really the thing. You remember the 3rd step promises where we say God will provide for us if we get close to him from his work well. These are the results of staying close to God. The 5th step promises we feel we're on the broad highway walking hand in hand with the spirit of the universe. This is the results of the broad highway. So let's see what it says here. These are the most important promises in the book, because if I get these promises and I have these promises, I'm not going to get loaded again, right? And there's a law of step 12 connected to this too. This is everything we hope for once we realized it was a spiritual malady, right? We prayed to be off of drugs and alcohol, but this is what we prayed for once we were fighting. Once we looked at our 4th step and we're halfway through written our 4th step and look at how am I going to get past this stuff, right? Let's see what it says. And we had ceased fighting anything, anyone, even alcohol. What does cease mean? It means to stop, or even better, come to an end. Has your anger come to an end? When I hear cease fighting anything, anyone, even alcohol, that's like someone who's free of anger. That's very different from the actor that talks about in the book who's always in collision with something or someone, even when his motives are good. Now we stop fighting. So if we're still fighting anything, am I recovered? Look back when you called yourself a recovered alcoholic before, and maybe you're back again. Were you still fighting things because you weren't recovered? People say I'm a recovered alcoholic, and yet they're still fighting alcohol. 3 things they mentioned here: anything, anyone, alcohol. Not kind of. If I say I'm doing step 10, my obsession is gone, but I'm arguing and judging people, that's not recovered. For by this time, sanity will have returned. Sanity have returned. Soundness of mind, whole. This is where step 2 finally turns into reality. Step 2, we just wanted to believe something could happen, and we realized the only way that could happen is by doing these steps that someone's telling me to do. So we're on page 84. Step 2 started, the journey of step 2 started on page 44. 40 pages of directions and lots of work, right? Lots of guidance and directions, and plus the guidance of a recovered person. When wholeness occurs, the mind is being retrained away from insanity. You can't take your insane mind and say, I'm going to make it better. No, we turn on one life over the care of God, including that. That's why I say the steps are not about learning, they're about unlearning. It's all about renewing our mind and staying in God's will. Look at this. We'll seldom be interested in liquor if tempted. If tempted, we recoil from it as a hot flame. Think about that. Reaching out and grabbing something. Recoil means spring backwards. Isn't it very interesting? Very interesting. We react sanely and normally, and we'll find this has happened automatically. This book is hammered home to us that our mind is not normal when it comes to booze. Now we react sanely and normally, and it's happened automatically. So automatically something is done on its own, or when something is corrected without thinking about it, automatically. He's saying sanely and normally happens without thought. It's just there. Cease fighting anything, anyone. Maybe sometimes people can't stop fighting anything because they're fighting themselves, whether they're still fighting things or not. Think about that for a second. It's supposed to happen automatically. We will see that a new attitude towards liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. It just comes. No thought or effort. But we just did inventory. We just discussed our fifth step for 7 hours with somebody. We've been seeking God, making amends now. Through the action of 49, we overcome the spiritual malady. And the reason why it's without any thought or effort on our part, we don't inventory our drug use or alcohol use in step 4. Any thought or effort on our part. The effort is working on ourselves, our thinking, our spiritual malady. That's the miracle of it. That is the miracle of it. We are not fighting, neither are we avoiding temptation. Wow. We're not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. So you think of a miracle. A lot of people give up on miracles because, like in the Bible, the miracles are pretty crazy, right? You mean like when Jesus heals the blind man? Did Jesus heal the blind man, or the blind man believe he could be healed? That's kind of what happens with us. We got to believe we can be healed. A miracle is this unexplainable event by the laws of science and nature, our intelligence. So it's looked at as some supernatural divine action, occurrence, let's say. Where do miracles come from? God. Again, God, you don't sit there and go, well, it could be just coincidence, and God either is or isn't. We like to tell ourselves, this book tells us we like to see spiritual release, we like to tell ourselves it wasn't true. Are you still doing that? But every single one of us is a miracle in here. Every second someone dies of this disease. Someone just, drowned in their puke from alcohol. Someone just got alcohol poisoning. Someone just OD'd on heroin. People are dying. Boom, boom, boom. Every second. Blink your eyes and people are dying. Why not us? Because God has a plan for us. And that is for you to be a messenger. Maybe this plan has been going on a long time. You haven't figured it out yet. But why are we still here when people are dying all the time? It also says, neither we, it also says, neither are we avoiding temptation. Temptation is something you want to do, even though you know it's something you should avoid. You know, we're not doing that. We're not avoiding temptation. It means I can go anywhere, I can do anything I want to do. Right? I'm free. We feel though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Neutrality means being neutral, participation. There's a saying in the war, silent during wartime, which means we didn't want to have arguments amongst people because some people may not agree why we're there. Back in World War II, that's where it came from. And basically what that term meant was if someone believed in the war and someone didn't believe, that we didn't want to argue. You know, it means no longer fighting anything. I'm neutral and I'm not giving in to my resentments anymore. Do you want to be right or do you want to be free? No longer fighting anything or anyone. That's what they're saying here. And here's the greatest promise in the book. So here's the one thing is, why are we no longer fighting alcohol? And I heard a guy say the other day, when we overcome, let me read this next one. We have not sworn off and said the problem has been removed. The obsession, this blindness is gone. We are recovered, right? I heard a guy say the other day, you know, one problem at a time. One problem at a time. You know, do it one problem at a time. Once the obsession is gone, work on your malady, work on your spiritual malady, and look at it that way. You know, right here in the book confirms that if we do 4 through 9 and apply step 10 to our lives, the obsession of blindness will go away. The thing that drove us to Alcoholics Anonymous, along with the allergy, is gone. The allergy is not gone, but the obsession is gone. Remember in 64, there was a promise when the spiritual malady is overcoming strength mentally and physically. That's right there. The ability, meaning by having the ability to connect to God, the obsession is gone. Allergy not fed. We're neither cocky nor are we afraid. This is our experience, how we react as long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. You know, fit spiritual condition. That's a deep place to be in fit spiritual condition. Fit spiritual condition is a condition I'm in as a result of seeking spiritual wellness of steps 4 through 9. And then daily or minute by minute, as I said. Spiritual wellness is seeking the spirit within oneself to become in touch with that spirit and know the other dimensions in life and know that I can be a good person, and know that I can love all and understand directions and goals and ideals and awareness. There's so much for us to do. Our ego wants to do it for us. Our ego wants to say, this guy's not right. I did that before, you know? So let's see what fit spiritual condition looks like. Let's see what we can do when we're fit spiritual. Let's go to page 100. And look what it says. Assuming we're spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. Notice it begins with a condition, assuming we're spiritually fit, assuming the obsession's gone, right? Assuming your resentments. So it's not just over the obsession. Spiritually fit is cease fighting anything, anyone, alcohol. No longer having resentment whip my butt every day, no longer having fear. And people will sit in here and think that's impossible. No, it's not. Assuming we're spiritually fit, we do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do. People have said we must not go where liquor is served. We've heard this in rehab before. We must not have in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which have drinking scenes. We must not go into bars or friends' house to hide their bottles or their bags if we go to their homes. We mustn't think and be reminded of alcohol at all. Our experience shows it's not necessarily true. So anyone who's been to rehab, you know, knows about triggers, you know, or relapse prevention. Don't go back to the slippery places. Oh, you can't do that. That's your old neighborhood. You know, avoid the liquor aisle in the store. Don't go to the 49er game because there's so beer there. You never ever again talk to your old drug friends. So I went to rehab. I had to make a list of people that I couldn't be around for. There were triggers. There were family members, friends, drinking buddies, using buddies, ex-girlfriends, bosses, co-workers, neighbors, just about anybody. This doesn't sound like freedom, you know. And it gets better. Places. This is what, when the counselor stepped in and told me what I couldn't go. Can't go to bars anymore. You can't go to golf courses anymore. All the things I like to do. Football games, tailgating, grocery store, school, work, certain streets, you know, lakes, fishing, weddings, graduation, birthday parties, mowing the lawn. I kept hearing guys talk about that. I can't mow the lawn anymore. I heard that at meetings before, all the time. I could be a millionaire if how many times I've heard that. I don't know what the F mowing the lawn has to do with drinking, but it's just, you know, basically with these, I'm living my life in a box. Let's see what the book says about that box that they want us to live in. We meet these conditions every day. An alcoholic who cannot meet these conditions still has an alcoholic mind, still has the obsession, the reoccurring persistent idea of drinking. There is something around with his spiritual status. Interesting how he says that. Every time you relapse, it's not necessarily because of the obsession. Every time something's wrong with your spiritual status to begin with. You know, not in fit spiritual condition, not doing 10, 11, 12. It's impossible to pick up if I'm doing 10, 11, 12. It's impossible. His only chance for sobriety would be at some place like the Greenland ice cap, and even then, an Eskimo would turn up with a bottle or a bag and ruin everything. Ask any woman who sent her husband into distant places on the theory he would escape the alcohol problem. If you have an obsession, relapse prevention doesn't work, right? Go to page 42. This is my experience. This is my experience. I remember going to rehab, 25 years old, had a slip up in between, went back again, and they put me like an advanced version because I came back so quick, like 3 weeks or something. And I thought, you know what? Now I've got it. Now I know where I'm not supposed to go. Now I know what I'm not supposed to do. I know everything there is about my brain. 42 describes me perfectly. They said that though I did raise a defense, would raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, that just did happen and more. This is my story right here. For what I learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. We can get PhDs in alcoholism. Look at Dr. Bob, who's a doctor. But look at this. Everything I learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I mean, anyone in here that's new could also, can you handle seeing a bag? You know, from that moment, I realized, I realized I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that power, that willpower, my power, and self-knowledge, knowing about all this stuff and what I'm not supposed to do, were not helping those strange mental blank spots in between the run and all that. Go back to the page we're on. Here's the thing. Willpower and self-knowledge. Strange mental blank spots. Willpower and self-knowledge, strange mental blank spots. You get it? It's called obsession. Hazy. Broken down. How did it happen again? You know, rarely do we plan up our relapses, and we pick up well before we ever drink. You know, if I'm thinking about using right now, I've already picked up. It's already started. It is our belief any scheme of combating alcoholism that proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. So much for triggers, right? If the alcoholic tries to shield himself for a time, may succeed for a time, but usually winds up in a bigger explosion than ever. Everyone been that bigger explosion than ever? Gone back out and it's worse? I mean, Jason gave thumbs up. I guess that means he was, I don't want to say employee of the month, but We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. He doesn't like to use the word fail a lot in this book, but he does there. So the triggers really exist? No. If anyone has triggers, what you need to say is you have obsession. It's just different fancier words. People made a lot of money off our obsessions, a lot of money, the alcohol and the rehabs, aftercares and all that stuff. I'm not saying they're bad places. I was a counselor for years. I get it. I get it. It's the obsession, is what triggers are. If you do this process and still have triggers, you believe that you have these boundaries, you're a ticking time bomb. You need to get on step 4. You need to sit down with your sponsor and surf the miracle. Put your feet on the board and surf it in. And there'll be a bunch of us there waiting for you, cheering you on. That's what happens. But newcomers need to know this allergy obsession stuff and push this trigger crap out of the way. People place, powers to people, places, and things instead of the allergy. Telling all these places I'm supposed to, I have a self-centered mind with an obsession, unmanageability, insane mind with the idea, these triggers makes them think, key points in the books aren't true. That's what happened. No, that's not true. Recovered? You can't be recovered. How many times did someone tell you that? I'm recovering. Well, yeah, you probably just proved the fact you are. That's what I said. I tell them. That's what my grand sponsor used to say. I said, why do people say recovering? It's because they are. So our rule is not avoid places where there is drinking. It's a condition. We have a legitimate reason for being there. That includes bars, nightclubs, receptions, weddings, even playing an ordinary whoopee party. I think Jason's been to a few whoopee parties in his day. And Kevin, and to a person who has experienced with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but isn't. You will notice we made some important qualifications. If you want these qualifications, you have to work for them. Therefore, ask yourself on this occasion. This is a great question that I always ask myself. Have I good social, business, or personal reason for going to such places? Or am I expecting to steal a little, this is the dangerous, steal a little vicarious pleasure of the atmosphere of such places? Oh, maybe I'll meet a girl there, or a guy there, or maybe I can just sit back and watch people be funny. No. If you can answer these questions satisfactorily, you need have no apprehension. Go or stay away. Go or stay away, whatever seems best. But be sure you're on solid spiritual ground before you start. What does solid spiritual ground look like? I said it too many times tonight, you know what it looks like before you start. That your motives going in is good. Do not, here's something that I always say to myself to this day. Do not think of what you can bring, you will get out of an occasion. Think of what you can bring to it. Say that before you go into a meeting, before you want to go into the meeting and pick people apart. Right? You want to go into the meeting and pick people apart for not doing the steps? Think of not what you're going to get out of it. Think what you can bring to it. But if you are shaky, you better work another alcoholic instead. Wow. So fit spiritual condition, spiritual fitness is like physical fitness. It cannot be achieved overnight or staring in the mirror, wishing you had this 6-pack abs or whatever. So people want to be strong, but they don't want to lift weights. People want to lose weight, but no one wants to go on a diet. They say they want that stuff. The reality is people want to change, but few want to make the effort to change. Now, take that self-centered mind and throw it in with the obsession. How many times does your obsession talk you out of that? Everybody wants long-term recovery, but no one wants to do the work. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a 97% recovery rate. Failure rate, and a 3% recovery rate. We cannot just snap our fingers and make it happen. I wish we could. I wish we could. Wish I could touch people on the forehead and just say, you're healed. But spiritual fitness is not gained through observation, perfect planning, talking about it, reading Eckhart Tolle books, all these great spiritual books we love. It's not going to happen through good intentions. It's not going to, acting spiritual. It says in this book, we must live spiritual, be spiritual. So it's not achieved by the spirit. It's also, know this, it's not achieved by the spiritual activity we did last week. We must do the work, right? Just like when you hit maybe some of us worked out in here and you know what it feels like when you hit that plateau and you're just pumped a bunch of weights, whatever. And, that plateau does not make you strong today. It's coming back the next day and doing it again and again and again. And we will find that what kept us spiritually fit a month ago is not going to do it now. You can't stay full on what you ate yesterday. You can't stay spiritually fit on what happened last week. Freedom doesn't have a history behind it. Freedom is what we want, but there's no history in freedom. Meaning I can't look back at the freedom I had yesterday and go, oh, thank God I have that from yesterday. It doesn't work that way. There's a great book called Freedom Has No History. It explains it very well. The freedom I have right now is the only freedom that matters in this second. And you get to that level of humility where you say, there's no one I'd rather be with than who I'm with right now. No one I'd rather be looking at, talking to in the moment. The moment is what we're trying to find here. So the spiritual fitness, it's the work of a lifetime. And is it hard work? Yes. But it's only as hard as you make it. And what I mean by that, up here. So if I do step 10, it doesn't feel like hard work because I'm getting rid of that. Daily dedication to being repetition, continuous action, perfecting and enlarging my spiritual life to work in self-sacrifice for others. The true test of anyone who's walked this path is to always keep working for growth. Basking in glories of spiritual victories from the past only lead to defeat. The key to is not let up, to seek growth in 4 through 9. A very different lifestyle than we're accustomed to. Very different. Very different. We need, when we're doing 4 through 9, we need to push using and all that stuff out the window. Here's what I did. And it's like, who did you hurt? Who did you hurt? Who did you fear? What did you fear? What did you, the resentments that you went over 5 years ago on your inventory, do you still have those? We want to become conscious of our inner being. And the more conscious we are of our inner being, we grow spiritually. Simple as that. The more we grow spiritually, the more we become. Why do we want to be spiritual conditioned? Page 77 says our real purpose is to fit ourselves, spiritually fit ourselves, so we can be maximum service to God and the people about us. That's it right there. That's it right there. Page 66, it describes it, perfectly what happens to us. But with the alcoholic whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience, this business of resentment is infinitely great. We found it as fatal. From harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. The insanity of alcohol returns and we drink again. For us to drink is to die. Anyone experience that? So I'm going to close with a little story. And it's not a happy story. Early in recovery, I met this guy who became a huge influence on my life. Still a huge influence on my life, on what he taught me in the steps and where he wound up. And, along with my sponsor and my grand sponsor, probably the 3rd or 4th biggest influence on me. I can't say I had 5 guys that really influenced me a lot. And he was one of them, one of the top 5. So we did, we did book studies together. He did book studies up at the rehab I do it at. And matter of fact is, even he brought everyone's game up. He could explain instincts. There's no one that could explain instincts like him. Matter of fact, people that were doing the book study with us never mentioned instincts too often until he started hammering them, right? But he taught me how to meditate and brought me some really cool places. He accompanied me in my amends. He kept me motivated. called me on my shit. And he had strong points for 10, 11, 12. And he showed me by example the importance of 10-step inventory. He was a perfect example of what I wanted to be: calm, cool demeanor, kind of swayed. It's kind of swayed around. And you know where he is today? He's dead. And what happened? Well, this is what happened. So he was doing 10 when things crop up all the time, and he always had his 10-step inventory in his pocket. He taught me that. And when something went wrong, he wrote it down. He talked to someone about it, gave it to God. And he'd always bring it up to me that he had done that and led by example. And then he got a big resentment. He thought he was right about it. He went through a bad breakup and he would not make amends to the significant other he had. Step 10 went from daily to less and less and less. And then step 10 stopped altogether. His demeanor, calmness and demeanor changed, and he was restless, irritable, and discontent. And the sad thing is he just wasn't the same person. And he slipped into the darkness. With his mind full of resentments and fear, he could no longer meditate. He stayed sponsoring for a few more months, but he was with the holier than thou attitude. And I never remember once a guy trying to make a correction on something that was going on. And he basically yelled at the guy where we sponsor at, and he's told he couldn't come back to sponsor anymore. So his insanity built and built and built after that, and like it wasn't there already. And he drank. I remember him telling me when he came back for a short period of time that the frustration of drinking again made him want to use more. And he went to jail, which he'd never been to before. And he went in and out of jail, even in prison for a short time, like a year or two, in and out of recovery. He could never get back what he wanted. And he made the grave mistake of saying, if I just get back to the place I was in step 6 before, I'll be fantastic. You can't do that. You have to do the steps to the best of your ability. Eventually, one night in a clean, sober house, sober, at least he died sober, his heart stopped. I believe he died of a broken heart. He had a lot of pressure on him, and he died all alone. As a matter of fact, people didn't know he'd been sat there a few days. It should not have been like that. It should not have been that way. His story, should not have ended that way. His funeral had 6 people there. 6 people there. I don't think he died. He didn't die in Clinton. He died in a place, little. I was confused. It's a little shed, like mother-in-law house he was living in. But his heart just stopped. There were 6 people at his funeral. If he would have had his funeral 2 years before or 5 years before, there would have been 600 people there or more. No joke. Matter of fact, he ministered over a funeral I went to one time. He was that type of guy. He married people in the program. But I can honestly tell you, if he had not stopped doing 10, he'd be with me today. I'd be walking with him and growing with him and being around him. He put away that life support system he had. And he started doing things himself, and he just went to pieces. And he told me that. The last conversation he had, he told me, he goes, dude, never let up on 10, dude. He said, never let up on 10, 11. He goes, because if you do, you just start hating, judging the world and everyone around you, and you want people to do the things the way you want to do, and that's all that matters. Exactly what he told me. Living the spiritual life, we're either growing spiritually and that's the lesson learned. We're either growing spiritually or we're declining spiritually. That's what happens. If I'm not moving forward in spiritual progress, like what I talk about here, we go regress. It means to return to a previous state that I swore to God I wouldn't put myself into again. For many, that previous state is impossible to get rid of. It's not easy. The more and more it happens, eventually you can't get out. And the greatest thing about the steps is everything is laid out for you. All you have to do is follow them. They're not difficult. They're not hard. We make it difficult. It's not a mystery why we are relapsing over and over again. It's not a mystery at all. We just have to do this process and make it our life. You know, I'm doing a new side wellness thing right now, and the coach said, hey, well, maybe you might have to rearrange some of your meetings and stuff like that. And I said, if I rearrange my meeting, I can't do that. He goes, really? And I said, he's not recovery. And I just said, it would just get to the point where I guess I can't do what that with you. And he goes, no, dude. He goes, do what you need to do. That's how I am, though. You know, continue to use these principles of way of life, and you have heaven and enjoy permanent recovery. That's it. You know, next week we're going to get tail into step 10, about resting on our laurels, and get into step 11. And I'm going to stop the recording there.